This is Anything But Footy. Welcome to BST, British Summertime. The football season is nearly over, thank goodness, as hope springs eternal, frankly, for all summer long. But we're here every week to celebrate and sometimes criticise all things Olympic and Paralympic. We're unashamedly biased and we're proud of it. I'm John.
And I'm Michael, and as British Summertime has kicked in, we thought we would start this week with winter sport. So we've got cross-country on the agenda, we've got speed skating on the agenda, and we've got bobsleigh on the agenda, and that leads the programme, that leads the podcast this week.
And you can get in touch at any time at Anything But F on Twitter, Facebook and Insta. And we've had some chats this week, which will lead us on to those conversations, as Michael has said. Also, download and share us on iTunes, Spotify or your usual podcast provider. Also to come, London 2012 could be recreated in 2026. Why British sailors have already led the way before the big week of racing in Mallorca by getting their hands dirty. And Andy Murray is starting it this year. Could he finish it next year? But first, as mentioned, summer is here. The clocks are going forward, so where better place to start than Michael said? Winter sports. Who said this podcast isn't produced? We're celebrating another Olympic medal. Maybe a year and a bit away from Tokyo 2020 and a year on from Pyeongchang. But frankly, we like to give credit where credit's due here at Anything But Footy. So congratulations to the four-man British Bobsleigh team who won a bronze medal at Sochi 2014, which actually made it our most successful games at that point, winter games, ever. Michael, pick up the story. Incredible stuff.
Yeah, congratulations to John Jackson, Bruce Tasker, Joel Fearon and Stuart Benson. 5 years later, they initially finished fifth, of course, in Sochi, in the bobsleigh, the four-man bobsleigh, behind two Russian bobs. And I'm afraid that the two Russian teams have been kicked out. The team that finished first got kicked out a couple of years ago. And then we heard in November 17, 3 members of the second bob also had been found guilty of committing doping violations. So they've been kicked out as well. The cheats haven't prospered this time. And Great Britain bobsleigh gets moved up. And it's been officially confirmed that they have won that bronze medal. So they didn't get their podium moment in Sochi, but we understand, and we've heard this week from Team GB, that they are now planning a suitable podium moment for British bobsleigh. But so many bigger pictures at work here, as we know. The funding, which began for bobsleigh in 2012, which continued through 2014, was there in 2016 when John Jackson retired, but no support ahead of Beijing 2022. UK Sport have allocated over £20 million ahead of that next Winter Games. But as we know, ahead of Pyeongchang, the women's team had their funding cut. Misha McNeil and Misha Moore actually crowdfunded themselves to get there. They finished 8th. They outperformed the men's crews that were funded to go there. The 2 men finished in 12th, the 4 men 17th and 18th. But had this bronze medal been allocated at the time, had those 4 guys had their medal moment, could the funding ahead of Pyeongchang meant that those performances would have been better and would have set the bobsleigh programme up?
And you've been talking about this in the last few editions of Anything But Footy, and you know, funding is such a key to what we do or what sport can achieve and what our British athletes can achieve. And you're right, it just must be so frustrating.
I just think for everyone involved in that bobsleigh programme, clearly Pyeongchang was not a good games for the team. I've just said there, 17th and 18th, very disappointing results in a sport that traditionally has done okay for Team GB Great Britain in the Winter Olympic context. Had they won that bronze medal, they might have seen their funding increase. Of course, winning medals doesn't guarantee funding. You look at the bronze medal won in badminton in Rio, Chris Langridge, Marcus Ellis. They then subsequently had the programme, subsequently had the funding cut, not them as individuals. So it doesn't guarantee. A bronze medal at the time wouldn't have guaranteed funding, but it might have helped. And then it might have set more progress ahead, obviously, of the games that we saw in Pyeongchang where they were so disappointing.
And at that point, it was the most successful Winter Olympics ever, if we'd have won that 5th medal in 2014, because it now equals the 5 medals we won last year at Pyeongchang in 2018. And as you said, Michael, John Jackson said, cheats have cost us that moment, along with other nations. I would like to say, what a complete and utter waste. What a mess. that Winter Olympics really was. You know, I'm so glad that Russia are still banned from athletics, the only sport strong enough to step up to them and deny them what they actually want, which is glory, glory, glory. You know, London 2012 was supposed to be the cleanest games ever. We know it's not, because tests are still taking place, and this week more athletes were still being awarded medals 7 years on. But 2014 in Sochi, Russia's Putin's plaything, to show the world what Russia could do. It was an absolutely disgraceful event, and everything that came out from that McLaren report afterwards, where drug samples were passed through walls and altered, the whole thing is a complete and utter waste. And I'm really sorry for, you know, up until now, it's an absolute disgrace that this thing has not been rectified. Now it has been. But what a sorry state it is. State-sponsored doping, you know, they should remain out of international sport until they are really clean and really want to be back. And I know that WADA are obviously looking at it at the moment. But, you know, well done to Seb Coe and athletics for still at the moment holding them away.
But WADA are taking on a state. They're never going to win, are they? If the state want to sponsor their athletes to achieve at the elite level, achieve at the Olympics, achieve at World Championships, they're always going to be a step ahead of what WADA and what the, you know, the national doping bodies can do, unfortunately. You know, if it was up to me, I would just go in and get that expensively assembled Winter Olympic Park in Sochi and bulldoze the whole thing, because, you know, what we saw, what we witnessed there over 17 days or whatever of competition during those Winter Olympics, what can you trust? What can you have trusted from those games? These guys have had to wait 5 years. They've seen their programme dismantled in that time subsequently. British Bobsleigh, you know, at the moment is at its probably lowest point that it's ever been. As I said, it had to be crowdfunded as far as the women's bob to get to the last games, and all because of that state-sponsored doping programme. Bulldozed the whole setup.
And you know, Lizzie Arnold won a gold medal. You know, obviously she's now retired after doing the same thing in Pyeongchang. But that, you know, that Sochi medal, as you say, slightly tarnished by what gone on elsewhere in those games. Now, I thought you'd heard the last edition saying that there was a lack of skating in Britain was dire, Michael. And I thought people were listening to you, because 35 years on from Bolero, there was a new skating programme announced this week. But it's speed skating.
Well, yeah, the British Ice Skating and the National Ice Centre have launched a new programme this week. So clearly they were listening, and thank you to them for their support on Anything But Footy. But yes, they've received a £100,000 grant to support talented skaters. And this sort of follows on neatly, if you like, from what we were talking about there with funding and bobsleigh, because UK Sport have allocated $6.35 million for the curling programme ahead of Beijing 2022. Skeleton, obviously, with its medals, got $7.2 million. Ski and snowboard, we've mentioned, haven't we, how the ambition is to be a top 5 snow nation in the Olympics. They got $7.2 million. But the funding was cut for short track speed skating, the world-class programme getting no more funding. That is until Sport England have stepped in now, and they put this new performance programme together. Now, they've only given them £100,000, so compared to the $6.35 million and the $7.2 million totals I mentioned, it's not a great deal, but it's something. It's something to support some of the speed skaters to maybe try and follow in the footsteps of someone like Elise Christie, of course. Now, you watch back those Winter Olympic Games now, and Elise Christie went in there as a 3-time world champion, and she had all sorts of problems, obviously, you know, with injuries and accidents on the ice and everything. But actually the entire programme, if you think about the pressure she had on herself, the entire programme wanted her to win a medal, because they knew that from a funding point of view, if she didn't win a medal and none of her teammates won a medal, that was it. They were going to get cut from the programme.
Well, well done to Sport England, as you rightly say, Michael. Still to come, is golf really needed in the Olympics? And Murray...
Yes.
And no, it is not. And Murray
Yes.
and marathon. But first, sticking with our summer theme, it's an event we all remember, getting freezing cold in our gym kit, but being allowed out of the grounds of school legally to traipse around the local streets and annoy the local community. Yes, the good old cross-country. Well, the World Championships took place in Denmark over the last few days. And Great Britain finished 8th overall, 4th in the women's event, and it seems like it was a brilliant cross-country World Championship, so much so that people are now saying, should it be an Olympic event? We will talk about that in a moment. Just to give you the headlines from the event, though, Kate Avery was the first Brit home in 30th place in the women's race after 10 kilometres on the demanding and undulating course. In fact, it went up a grassy slope of a museum itself, which was quite incredible, seeing the pictures of that. She was 60th after the first 2-kilometre lap, but then 3 other Brits finished in the top 40 as well. Scotland's Mari McLennan was 32nd, Jennifer Nesbitt, who faded after a fast start, 34th, and team captain Jess Piasecki in 36th. So well done to the women. They finished behind Ethiopia, Kenya and Uganda. And in the men's seniors, Patrick Deaver was the top British man, finishing 37th and 9th the men's senior team overall. Now, this isn't an Olympic event, as I've said, but maybe it should be. The oldest and most traditional parts of athletic, Seb Coe has described this event as a watershed moment and talked the IOC could include it in the Olympics. What do you reckon, Michael?
I think cross-country would be an excellent addition to the Olympic Games, actually. And I think what happened in our house over the weekend in Denmark as well just showed what a fantastic sport it is. I was watching quite a lot of it online. They had a mud pit, a sand pit, they had water holes, they had racers going through a Viking zone. As you mentioned, they ran across that grass-covered roof of the museum as well. And also they had a big mass participation event, which is interesting because Paris are looking at doing that with their marathon at the Olympics. So they're looking to have the elite marathon in the morning as you would normally do, and then a mass participation event, London Marathon style, later on in the afternoon. The details are being worked out. But it means that everyone would then have the opportunity to run the same course on the same day as the Olympic medalists. And I think you could do the same with cross-country. If you're looking to try and get people to buy into an Olympic Games, cross-country would be a great addition to the Olympic programme. What I would suggest, though, don't add it to the Summer Games, add it to the Winter Games.
Ooh.
We all remember doing cross-country in the winter, don't we?
Yes.
It would be fantastic in the mud, the ice, the snow, if you like. It would also bring different nations to the podium. You mentioned Ethiopia, Kenya, Uganda, of course, were nations that won Olympic medals. They aren't regular nations at the top of the podium in the Winter Olympics, so it would bring different nations to the podium, different audiences, and it would have good televisual appeal as well. Exactly what the IOC want.
Yeah, and Athletics Weekly reporting that they're still struggling to get the top runners even at this event, this World Championships that, you know, we've said has gone down very well. There were no runners from Finland, Belgium, the Netherlands or Hungary, Germany, Norway, Portugal, Turkey and Switzerland fielding literally one athlete per team. So you can kind of see why they're looking at doing that. And I think the Winter Olympics is a great call. Thanks to Ben for highlighting this on Twitter to us. Anything but F on Twitter is our account for things that we should be talking about. And I think, Michael, Seb Coe needs to give you a call. And so do the IOC, and see if you can get...
Well, I sorted it out with the skaters last week. So, you know, I'm here for you, Seb. Give us a bell, text me, WhatsApp me, find me on Snapchat, and I'll talk you through how to put cross-country into the Winter Games.
And the only thing you didn't mention when you were saying what was on the course in Denmark was the local chippy, because frankly that was the hardest thing to get past in the cross-country. It was always like, can we just pop in there for a bit?
It was the Fisheries pub, because I used to go to school in Aldenham in Hertfordshire, and we used to have to run round the reservoir, and it was the Fisheries pub that we found a challenge to get past. I've got to be honest.
You couldn't beat the Great Place. That was my one. Anyway, now London 2012 we have a lot to thank London 2012 for. Not only for staging the greatest Olympics, frankly, of all time, and that's just our humble opinion, but also it gave me the chance to meet Michael, and Michael the chance to meet me. Now, the reason why we bring it up, 2012, because that amazing location where London staged those games, the Queen Elizabeth Olympic Park, a couple of big things coming out of that this week, Michael, particularly maybe another multi-sport event taking place there.
I'm all over the multi-sport events, as are you, and they are being lined up to host the 2026 European Championships now. And London would just be able to host this. They'd be able to host it tomorrow because athletics, cycling, swimming, diving, rowing, triathlon, gymnastics, they would all just be able to be hosted in the London Olympic Park or close to the London Olympic Park tomorrow. Now, we remember the inaugural event that was kind of weirdly split between Glasgow and Berlin, the athletics in Berlin Glasgow hosted the rest of it using a lot of their 2014 Commonwealth Games facilities. Munich are being lined up, we understand, for 2026, but for 2022, London for 2026. That Olympic Park would be a really, really good host. It would rock, I think, to the European Championships. I think it would be a great venue for an event that would be in its third edition, so still essentially a fledgling event. But I think the crowds would come out. I think we know that. I think they would fill the stadiums. They would fill the aquatic centre again. And the great thing is everything's there. Everything's ready. The aquatic centre's there. The velodrome's there. So it's not a big, expensive thing to stage at these times when cities and when regions are looking at the cost of staging things like a Winter Olympics, a Commonwealth Games, a Summer Olympics. Everything would be there ready to go. We'd just have to pull some of the branding back out from London 2012, a few of those security marquees, print the tickets, and we'd be good to go.
You're right. Glasgow didn't quite work, did it? Gabby Logan and Claire Balding sitting in George Square in front of a small stage with some bands in the background, while Dina Asher-Smith was winning gold medals after gold medals in Berlin. Didn't quite work in that way, but I think, as you say, London in one place would be amazing. And, of course,
I love the concept. I love the concept of the European Championships every 4 years, if that's what they're going to do. I think it's brilliant to bring the 8-9 sports together. I'm not sure golf deserves its place on the programme, but I can see why they did it at Glen Eagles when it was in Glasgow. I love the concept. I love the multi-sport event. I think, though, it's going to be very difficult to find cities that can host it. London, for me, is an obvious choice.
And it has to be in the same place. And, boy, I mean, Birmingham Commonwealth Games 2022, London 2026. That would keep us in podcasts for a few more years, Michael, I think. Now, the only big question is, where on earth are they going to park the coaches for this event in 2026? Because I can tell you that a brand new stadium in East London could be a step closer, as plans have officially been submitted this week. An American company wants to build near the Olympic Park in Stratford, in fact, which used to be the coach park for the Olympics back in 2012. Yes, it's the Madison Square Garden Company. They bought 4.7 acre site in Stratford, and they want to build a huge new sports and entertainment venue known as the Sphere, which, as well as having what's thought to be the biggest LED TV screen in the world, would have capacity for around 21,000 people, and by the looks of things, just slightly more than the O2 Arena over the river in Greenwich. As well as that, developers claim it would support thousands of jobs, with 1,200 on site once the venue opens. The application has been handed to the London Legacy Development Corporation, and if successful, the Sphere could open in 2022. Gareth Bacon AM, he's a member on the London Assembly of the Budget and Performance Committee, said this venue would be very welcome boost to the local area economically, and will also give a helping hand to LLDC's finances, which, if you don't know, are still in a little bit of trouble. Now, you mentioned golf, Michael, because the World Matchplay has been taking place in Austin, Texas in the last few days, and golf, of course, is now an Olympic sport, back in Rio for the first time since the early 1900s, but of course it was a straight singles competition for the men and a singles competition for the women. Shouldn't it be different for the Olympics? Or in fact, should it be a mixed team, or should it just be scrapped?
Well, I loved golf at the Olympics, and I had the pleasure on that final day, the Sunday, of following Henrik Stenson and Justin Rose around. I'm not quite sure what's happened to that golf course in Rio. So there's a legacy argument there, I have to say, about golf at the Olympics. But then if you think about the Ryder Cup maybe in France, and then Paris hosting a golf event, fantastic golf courses, of course, in California. Los Angeles will host a fantastic golf event. I really liked it. I thought it was a fantastic addition. I remember when tennis came in 1988, people were sniffy about tennis. Andy Murray, 2 gold medals later, we wouldn't have tennis out of the games, would we?
No.
It's going to take its time to find its feet, golf, and it suffered because it didn't get the big names there. And I'm sure the reasoning behind golf going in originally was to get Tiger Woods at the Olympic Games. But I do agree with you. I do wonder whether they just need a bit of tweaking with the format. I remember putting this question to Justin Rose. He said, no, I want a 72-hole event. I want it to be like a traditional sort of major, like the Open, the Masters, USPGA, whatever. And I was thinking to myself, actually, the idea of a match play, a kind of knockout competition, that might just be that little difference to Olympic golf that would hook a few people in. Or, like you say, maybe a team format, a mixed team format, where we're looking, obviously, at the Olympic Games with more mixed team events. Triathlon are going to do it. Maybe a mixed team golf event might be quite good. The problem is, if you bring the very best golfers to the world, the issue is their scheduling, and they're not going to come to an Olympic Games to play maybe a match play tournament or even a 72-hole tournament over 4 days and then hang around to do maybe another tournament, whether that's a team, nation, cup type event or a mixed team format as well. Because as we know, Justin Rose had that gold medal hung around his neck. He came out into the car park. His agent was waiting. They had a plane on the runway. The door was open. The car was running. I had to stop him for one final interview, though, before we let him go.
You had a bit of a bromance with Justin Rose, though, didn't you? Let's be honest.
Yeah, I taught him his celebration, because he was obviously waxing lyrical about all these great Olympians he'd watched, people like Usain Bolt and the Lightning Bolt and Mo Farah with his M over his head. And I said, well, what are you going to do? And so between us, we came up with the Rosebud. And I was a little disappointed he didn't pull it out on the final green, to be honest. He did later do it in a press conference, though. So, you know, we like each other's tweets, let's put it that way.
Yeah, he was one of Team GB's big names and a superstar in Rio. But as you say, so many others pulled out. I'll never forgive Rory McIlroy for doing that. But the other issue with golf, apart from, as you say, the venue, because, you know, they basically played 4 rounds there. One for the men, 4 rounds for the women, and that was it. It's not exactly surfing or rock climbing. It's not a sport for the young people like break dancing that we've talked about in another edition of Anything But Footy. And, you know, as you say, goodness knows what's happened to that one that Rio built a brand new golf course for, even though there was a golf course somewhere else in Rio that could have staged it. Still to come, we're going to talk karate and sailing with Michael, but let me just tell you quickly that Andy Murray has been named as the official starter of the 2019 London Marathon. The 3-time Grand Slam champion, of course, currently recuperating from hip surgery, hoping to save his playing career and be at Wimbledon this summer, will start the famous race on April the 28th. He says it's an honour, and I may even run it myself one day. Andy, don't ever do it. Never do it in a million years. Never, ever, ever. Don't do it.
And if you can guarantee one thing, if someone's run a marathon, they'll tell you they've run a marathon.
Ooh.
I've run a marathon,
yeah, I
actually.
thought you might say that.
I would advise Andy Murray to steer clear of the marathon. I think his missus has run it in the past, so he has been down there and supported, and, you know, he knows the event. And I think, yeah, no better person than Sir Andy to start the London Marathon. There was a debate on the Olympic channel this week about your favourite ever Olympian, and I voted for sailor Hannah Mills as my favourite ever Olympian because she let me wear her gold medal for a photograph. So she narrowly beat off Justin Rose in that competition. But more importantly, she's led this brand new initiative called #Sailors for the Sea, and her and her British teammates have been this week cleaning the beaches in Mallorca of plastic pollution. So very important, an issue that's very much relevant at the moment, ahead of the Princess Sophia Trophy that they're all taking part in Palma this week, which is the first major regatta of the year and the first sort of landmark event on the selection process to Tokyo 2020, incidentally. So it's a big event, but well done to Hannah Mills, Giles Scott, Ailey McIntyre and all the others out there, as I said, preventing the plastic pollution on the beaches of Mallorca. And talking of landmarks on the road to 2020, karate is going to be an Olympic sport in Tokyo. So congratulations to Amy Connell and Joe Kellaway, who've won bronze medals at the European Championships in Spain this week, both hoping to qualify for the Olympics.
The Sun are starting their Karate Kid headlines already. The days are getting longer, the nights are getting shorter, more time to, frankly, listen and get in touch with Anything But Footy. Anything But F on Twitter. We're on Facebook and Insta. You can download and please share us and like us on your usual podcast provider, iTunes, Spotify, etc., etc. British Summertime is here, BST, or as we call it, Anything But Footy, Best Sport Time. Enjoy.